What up YouTube? Speck here with another video, and this time it's going to be a video response to I Have to Talk About This, and it was uploaded by Stuckmann. I have to talk about this. This video is clickbait. Now, people misuse the term clickbait, but clickbait is literally when you disguise your video as one thing, but when you actually click on the video, it's something completely different. Basically, every Rickroll video is clickbait. I have to talk about this by Stuckmann. So a little bit of background. Stuckmann announced in 2021, I think, that he was going to stop doing negative movie reviews, which was a poor decision, but we'll get into that later. He uploaded this video called I Have to Talk About This, and he has a very concerned look on his face, and makes you think that he's going to do a negative review. But as you can see when you watch the video, that is not going to be the case. So yeah, this video is literally clickbait. So let's check out the real video that you lied to people about.
So I just saw Madam Web. There was no screening for it in my area. There were no late night showings before the day, so I had to go see it on Valentine's Day. And I thought to myself, probably not going to do a video for this one.
Yeah, we know, because you stopped doing negative reviews of movies. Only doing positive reviews of movies is just as bad as doing only negative reviews of movies. And when you review movies, you have to give the whole spectrum. If you're a movie critic, you should give the full spectrum of both the positive and the negative of a movie. That's what I do, that's what Cody Leach does, that's what the Mr. Enter does, and it works like a fucking charm. Alright? I focus just as much on the positive as I do the negative. That's just how life works, really. There's a lot of bad, but there's also a lot of good.
Based off of what I've heard, since I do try to keep it mostly about film celebration on this channel. Having seen the film, I'm going to tell you that this is not a movie review of Madam Web. I am not about bashing filmmakers, artists. I know how hard...
Okay. There's a difference between rightly criticizing a piece of art and bashing artists and filmmakers. And I will tell you the difference. When you're criticizing a movie, you are only criticizing the movie, nothing else. If you bash the artist, you're saying like, oh, this guy is a fucking terrible director or a terrible writer or whatever. Most of the time, I don't even bring up the director in my reviews. And usually when I do, it's I don't really bash them or I don't really praise them or criticize them. I just try to, it's usually to figure out if their style works with the movie that they're trying to make. And sure, I went into a little bit of that territory with my Red Dawn review and my thoughts on the Rough Riders. But that's because John Milius is my favorite film director. I genuinely believe he is a skilled writer and director, and I really do like his style. And I think his talent often gets overlooked. And also, I want to call to attention, the way he worded that last statement I do get a shade of a holier than thou impression. Like he is saying that like he's indirectly saying that his way of doing things is the better way, and that anyone who does it any other way is a bastard. And I really fucking hate that I get that impression. And it just pisses me off. And the fact that his background was he was part of the Jehovah's Witness community, you know, those morons, and he left that community to pursue his film career, just makes it even worse.
Hard it is to make a movie. I do not know how hard it is to make a movie under the studio system. I was able to make an indie film without a giant corporation breathing down my neck, which is not the privilege that S.J. Clarkson had when she directed Madam Web.
Nobody ever said that it was easy to make a film, all right? Let's just get this out of the way. I'm pretty sure it's making a film under the studio system is really not that much different from making an indie film, because, well, you know, even the major studios, their situations are completely different, and we'll get into that later.
Under Sony, which I can only imagine was monumentally difficult. This is not going to be a video about Madam Web and telling you whether or not you should see Madam Web. There are plenty of people on this platform, as well as a website dedicated to aggregating reviews and giving it a number that's going to inform you of that, and you can choose to listen to those voices if you want. The information is out there. What I am...
So you're basically saying that if you wanted this video to be a review of Madam Web, well, tough shit, go watch other people, or go on Rotten Tomatoes, a site that has been known for actually removing reviews, negative reviews at the request of studios to, you know, give the impression that the quality is actually good. Rotten Tomatoes is not trustworthy at all anymore.
I'm compelled to make a video about is something that I heard pretty much every writer, some directors, and most actors bashing last year, and that is movie studios. But before we go any further, I do want to give a special thank you to the
Ooh, this is going to be a fun one.
Sponsor for this video, BetterHelp. The past few years have been so life-changing for me, becoming a father, dealing with the Hollywood strikes, making my first movie. It has been such a privilege to have something like BetterHelp to turn to when I feel like I really need to talk. It's a new year and a great time to work on yourself. BetterHelp makes...
You need to work on yourself. And I'll tell you why. I watched a video by Fury of the Film Fan, and it was about his experience with Chris Stuckmann. And from what I've heard, he was a very argumentative when people would tell him that he was wrong, and he was not being entirely honest with people, and he would say stuff like, he would only give like half truths, like he wouldn't tell him the full truth, and watching this video is just the one that really, I think, it's the video where I feel like it's the most evident where that part of his personality really comes through. Granted, I don't, and he actually made some good points of his, decision to only focus on positive reviews. Because yeah, it is toxic positivity. Granted, I don't agree with everything that Fear the Film Fan said, but his video gave me some really good insight into who Chris Stuckmann really is. And knowing that he's not being entirely honest and gets argumentative with people, this just makes this video even worse.
Starting therapy easier and much less intimidating for a lot of people. BetterHelp lets you have therapy sessions as a phone call, as a video chat, or even messaging, whatever's the most comfortable version of therapy for you. BetterHelp can match you to one of over 30,000 therapists in their network based on your needs, preferences, and location, which gives you access to a wider range of expertise than may be available in your city. To get started, you fill out a questionnaire that will ask you questions about what challenges you're going through and what kind of therapist you'd like, and then BetterHelp can match you with a therapist to help you. You'll be matched with a therapist in most cases within 48 hours. And you can schedule therapy sessions at a time that's convenient for you. And if you feel like your therapist isn't a great fit, you can switch therapists with a click of a button in your settings at no additional cost. So join over 4 million people who've used BetterHelp to start living a healthier, happier life. You can click on the link in the...
I'm starting to think that he made this video solely to because he made a deal with BetterHelp and they said they give you a choice, you had to make 2 videos to get paid. I think this is the only reason this video exists.
The description below. That's betterhelp.com/Chris Stuckmann. Clicking on that link helps support this channel, but it also gives you 10% off your first month at BetterHelp so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. Once again, that link is betterhelp.com/Chris Stuckmann. Thank you so much to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. In the case of Madam Web, this movie was put out by Sony in association with Marvel, probably not to the level of association that Tom Holland's 3 Spider-Man movies were. This video is inspired by essentially every live-action film that Sony has had some involvement in since Spider-Man 3 in the Spider-Man verse, that being Spider-Man 3, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, Venom, Let There Be Carnage, Morbius, and Madam Web. Since it got pushed back due to the strikes last year, none of us got to see what Sony did with Kraven the Hunter, but we will this year, so I can't really comment on whether or not Sony treated that property with respect. And of course I know that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man films don't necessarily relate to the Sony Spider-Man universe that they're trying to set up right now, nor do Andrew Garfield's movies, but this is not
Then why the fuck would you bring them up?
about that. This is about how...
Oh. At least you admit it's not about that.
Sony treats their characters and their properties, and more importantly, how they treat their filmmakers, and what exactly is going on, because I have so many questions. When you look at the films I mentioned that Sony has made, there's of course division from people about whether or not all of them are bad or good, and some people like more than others.
Okay, the only one that I've seen was the first Amazing Spider-Man, and you know what? I kind of liked it. I really do appreciate the grittier tone that it's going for, but I am aware that the Amazing Spider-Man 2 had a bunch of studio interference, but the thing is, I think Morbius is, and I think one of the Venom movies is, from what I've heard, actually didn't have studio interference. So to exclusively blame the studio for for the failings of a movie is fucking ludicrous. That's like saying that it's always the man's fault if a romantic relationship ends. That's just not true.
Plenty of people who like the first Venom movie, but I think there are more people who are a little disappointed by it, and especially the Let There Be Carnage sequel. But plenty of people enjoy Spider-Man 3 well enough. I'm one of them. There's a lot of things in Spider-Man 3 that I have fun with, although it's clearly not as good as 1 or 2. And there are people who enjoy The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 quite a bit. But I think that if you were to look at a consensus, the consensus is that the live-action, Sony-based Spider-Man universe movies have not exactly all been home runs. I haven't mentioned the animated Spider-Verse films, both of them being terrific. The way I view the two Spider-Verse movies is kind of the same way I view The Invisible Man and Split and Get Out and other films that Blumhouse has produced. Because Blumhouse has produced a lot of other movies as well. But those three really do seem like, damn, where'd those come from?
I hardly see the Spider-Verse movies as big fucking anomalies as you claim to be, because the people behind those movies worked with Disney and DreamWorks, and I think two of the writers worked on the Lego movie and the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs movies. So it's no wonder why Sony and Columbia Pictures trusted those people to make a financially successful movie.
Some studios have really good instincts, and they can pick filmmakers and stories across the board that for the most part are going to be at least decent. I look at a studio like A24. Pretty much most of their movies, if you see a trailer for an A24 film, you can probably bet that it's not going to be terrible.
Okay, I've never seen any A24 movie, but I will say that even if I did see a bunch of the A24 movies, I'm pretty sure that those are going to have a scatter shot of quality, just like any other studio.
That it's at least going to be decent, and maybe even really good. And I don't feel that way.
Or maybe it's going to be any pretentious shit that is not worth remembering.
Every single studio, it's like a flip of a coin. You could get one of their best efforts, or you could get another one. And I do think it comes down to...
That's going to be, like I said, that's going to be with every studio.
The filmmaker they're working with, and whether or not they back off and give that filmmaker the freedom they need to tell a cohesive, coherent story. That doesn't mean that every writer is going to be great. Two of the writers of Madam Web worked on another film in the Sony universe that has been heavily criticized called Morbius. But
you just nuked your own argument. You basically, the writers of Morbius worked on Madam Web. So he's indirectly implying that that is the core issue with Madam Web. If Madam Web was written by the same people who did Morbius, then yeah, it is gonna suck. Because, let's be fair, these people are not good at their jobs.
But sometimes, what I've learned, and what I've experienced myself, not on my film, but on scripts that I've optioned to some studios, and it went nowhere, is that when people have power over you as a creative, when they're paying your bills and they're paying you well, they can tell you to do anything, and you have to do it.
No, you don't. You always have a choice to say, no, I'm just gonna make the best film that I can make. It's up to the writer to tell a cohesive and coherent story and have real passion, and it's up to the director to reshoot a scene if it didn't turn out that well, and get a better angle. What about, and yes, there is time management and budgeting. Yes, they matter. But to exclusively blame aim the studio. This is not okay. Let me just get this out of the way. Madam Web is actually not an example of studio interference. It's actually quite the contrary. According to S.J. Clarkson herself, she had complete freedom to do what she wanted. And guess what? The movie still turned out, really bad. If anything, the only reason the studio should be at fault here is for hiring S.J. Clarkson and the writers of Morbius in the first place.
No matter what. It's like that scene in Vampire's Kiss where Nicolas Cage is threatening to fire his secretary and he says,
"You're the lowest on the totem pole here, Alba. The lowest. Do you realize that?" "That's right, Alba. It's a horrible, horrible job. I couldn't think of a more horrible job if I wanted to. And you have to do it. You have to, or I'll fire you. Do you understand?"
Sometimes
That is literally like the worst fucking analogy that you could have used for Madam Web, because, like I've said, S.J. Clarkson had freedom to do what she wanted. And if you have freedom to do what you want, you should be doing better than this. It's okay to point out if a director is not good at their job and just not cut out for the work that they've done. It's actually very helpful so they can improve what they're doing.
That's exactly what it feels like when you're a creative dealing with a larger entity that has control over your creation, or at least your script or your story or your characters. When they can tell you what to do and you got to do it, it doesn't matter if you think it's insane. You have to find a way to make it work. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened on Madam Web and Morbius and all these movies, but
Well, good, because that's not what happened.
would not be surprised, because when I look at Sony's involvement with the Spider-Verse films, I see Lord and Miller that have had massive success on the big screen in the past, that have made a lot of money for a lot of people and have proven themselves to be very smart at what they do. And I can totally see a company like Sony saying, "Why don't you guys give us your best shot and then we'll give you some notes." Now, for a filmmaker like S.J. Clarkson, who made Madam Web, she's had a long and respectable career directing television, but she's directing her first movie and it's a Sony superhero movie. When I saw Madam Web earlier today, there wasn't a single part of me that thought, "Wow, this is just a terrible filmmaker."
I don't think anyone who saw that movie would agree with you, and are probably thinking that you're not being entirely honest with them. And after the knowledge from the Fury of the Film Fans video on you, I think that's actually what the case.
I could not help but see the myriad of evidence that has been laid at all of our feet that this is a studio that is simply retaining the rights to their characters, that does not care about the quality of this experience they're giving us. There's been
if you did your research, you would find out that you couldn't have even made this video because, this is not actually an example of studio interference.
too many examples of movies that all feel kind of the same, like a mishmashed early 2000s superhero movie. They can't seem to get out of that. No matter how many times we've said to this studio, we would prefer it if you went a different way, even with the excellent examples of their two Spider-Verse films. And I can't help but think, who...
Me. The problem with this entire video is that Chris just is just so close to understanding the core problem, but he constantly alludes to the fact that these people are just not good at their jobs, but he just can't say it because he doesn't want to hurt their fee-fees. And the myriad of, and I also find it funny that the myriad of evidence that you claim to have ignores the biggest evidence that has been leading to this entertainment dark age, and that's the fact that we introduced these diversity, equity, and inclusion. That Hollywood introduced these diversity, equity, and inclusion laws or rules somewhere in the 2010s. We saw that is why the woke era of Hollywood was so bad. We got countless examples of it, like the entire Star Wars trilogy, the sequel trilogy, the entire Star Wars sequel trilogy. We saw it with Ghostbusters 2016, Charlie's Angels, that Charlie's Angels reboot, and even in the early half of the 2020s, we got stuff like No Time to Die and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, of course, Madam Web. All these movies were heavily divisive, were criticized for being woke garbage. Some of them actually many of them actually did flop at the box office, and I don't think any of these are going to be fondly remembered. The woke era was a cancer that spread throughout the industry that is actually kind of dying down. And I mean, sure, we get a few of it. We still have remnants of it, like the ones that I've mentioned, but it's slowly coming to an end. And your approach is just you not being able to read the room and realizing that your approach is not working anymore, or more people are starting to wake up to it. As All That Remains would say, we're better than we used to be, but we still got so far to go.
Who is this for? Who wins here? Is it the audience? It seems like it isn't, guys.
No one wins in your approach, what you're doing. And if you had it your way, I doubt even you would win. You're trying to join a party that you're not invited to.
Is it the creatives? Definitely not. Is it the studio? Are they making a lot of money because they keep doing this over and over again? Sometimes it makes sense to make a Venom movie. It makes sense to make a Spider-Man movie. Those are characters that are going to generate money no matter what. Morbius and Madam Web, Kraven the Hunter, remains to be seen. That is not the same level of reward that a studio might receive from producing a Spider-Man or a Venom movie. So why are they making them? Is it to retain the rights? Is it to get some kind of financial break? Potentially. And in that case, they probably don't care that much about each and every one of us who forks over our hard-earned money to sit in a theater on Valentine's Day when they could have been doing anything else. I care so much about the filmmaker experience, and I am so aware of how crushingly difficult it can be to make a film, but I also care a lot about the audience, and I want people like myself who go to these movies to have a good time and to feel like they invested some of their money into something that gave something back to them.
If you care about the filmmaker experience and the audience experience, then maybe you should take what people are saying about your film into consideration, and what people are saying about Madam Web into consideration, and not be afraid to criticize other directors. Tell them what they need to improve on. I really do support filmmakers and writers being able to make whatever movie they want. But I also think that filmmakers and should have good judgment in the face of blind passion. Because if they don't, then their egos could get out of hand. That's probably what I think that's what happened. That's exactly what happened with George Lucas. In the past, he did take feedback into consideration, and he was told what would improve the movie, and he implemented it. And you know what? It worked with the Star Wars trilogy. Now, say what you want about them, but when he listened to feedback, those movies became very successful and really changed movie making. But over time, when he was starting to be surrounded by more yes men, and the quality of his work really suffered. People liked the prequels at the time, but became really divisive later on. And I think the George Lucas example alone is a perfect showcasing of why the studio can actually be really helpful to creatives. And they're not, and they're not always to blame for if a movie turns out like shit.
Inspired them in some way, or made them just happy for a couple hours. And Sony and their treatment of these characters seems to be doing the exact opposite. Currently in the industry, it's the Wild West when it comes to spec scripts especially. From what I understand, a lot of spec scripts are not even being read, very rarely in fact, unless you're a very specific kind of movie or a studio is looking for something so particular that you just so happen to be that perfect thing. From what I understand, lower budget horror is still being looked at, especially haunted house things or things that are very marketable. But in general, the industry has no idea what it's doing right now post strikes. They have no clue. Movies are selling for almost $20 million at festivals from first-time filmmakers, and other movies that seem like they should be selling really big because of the names that are attached aren't. Nope.
I disagree. Hollywood is reacting to factors that it didn't think would catch up to them. When the writer's strike of 2023 happened, a lot of people in the film industry were like trying to secure money. We're starting to rely on cheaper talent and money trying to do what they can to make their studios more profitable, because what they were doing in the past just wasn't working anymore. And because we weren't watching the shit that they were making. And this is why filmmakers were starting to rely on cheaper talent and seeing AI as the future for cinema. And I think what you're doing, trying to being afraid to like criticize film directors because you don't want to hurt their little fee-fees, is what partially led to where we are in the first place.
Nobody knows exactly what's happening right now because everyone is so beholden to this algorithm or whatever Netflix is telling them people want to see. This is creating an almost robotic-like dystopian conveyor belt of movies that we are essentially supposed to kneel at the very end of, open our mouth really wide and just consume, and then ask, when do we get the next conveyor belt thing that you have generated for us from your algorithm robotic AI thing.
Okay, this is the only point in the video that I actually agree with. Yes, quality trumps quantity. All right, that has been the case for all of it. If you make the product worse to fill a demand, then the industry then eventually what your business will die. It is much better to release good products in a timely manner, or rather than try to rush it to make some sort of deadline.
Whatever that is. Because when I watched Madam Web, there wasn't a single part of me that thought a writer sat down and came up with the idea of the final fight happening underneath a giant neon Pepsi Cola sign. I just don't think a writer sat in their apartment in LA and thought, that's a good idea. I'm pretty sure Sony...
Well, somebody did write that down. Some of the most fucking stupid ideas end up on film. Look at George Lucas. He was the one that fully came up with the idea of the fourth Indiana Jones movie being about aliens, or should I say interdimensional beings, which is a goddamn stupid idea. Yeah. Writers come up with stupid ideas all the time. If we don't give feedback, then we have fewer barriers to entry and more people who just aren't good at their jobs. Now, I'm not trying to argue the opposite of this. Like, writers are always to blame, and the studio doesn't hurt anyone. Alien 3 is notorious for having studio interference, but to exclusively blame the studio for every single failing is just disingenuous. It's just not true. And you know, he did say that that's not the case for all of them, but here's the thing. Writers, you know, fucking up a movie happens way more often than you claim that it does.
He said, we have to incorporate Pepsi in some way and deal with it. And that's what it's like for a lot of these creatives. I just heard a story today about someone who's working with a massive entity studio, I won't say what it is, who has hired that person to write a story based off of a very interesting hook. He wrote the whole script, came back to them, and they said, you know what, we don't really like that hook anymore, but we still like your story. Can you make it work without the hook? And this poor writer is trying to figure out how in the world they got hired to write a story based off of an idea and are now told to write the exact same story, but without the idea.
Why should I believe that story at this point? Like, I think I've made it pretty clear that you are not as trustworthy that as you claimed him to be. Maybe that he's so vague and you left. Maybe that hook that writer made just was actually the opening scene, and the studio thought, well, that it just doesn't make sense with the story you're trying to tell. Well, did you ever think of that? Of course not, because you don't want to hurt people's fees. God damn it. God damn it. This is why many people have turned on you.
And that's exactly the type of situation that so many writers find themselves in. And I would not be surprised if a lot of these Sony Spider-Man universe movies have had very similar conversations bouncing around their meetings. It's maddening, and it does good for no one. So what are my solutions for this? It's the same solution I've said for a couple years now, because I've started to make more discussion-based videos about the industry and how we can communicate with them and get better films and start to enjoy the theater-going experience more, and not just hope that a great film like Godzilla Minus One comes out of Japan so that we can enjoy that here. And it's the same thing I've always said, they hear us through our wallets. If a movie comes out that is genuinely great and we happen to see it in the theater, that's fantastic, but then buy it to own on digital or buy the Blu-ray of it. Let them know, like, this is more like it. And that...
I just want to focus on the advice that he gave right now. It is not the advice that you think it is. What he is basically saying is only pay for movies and buy the Blu-ray and DVD of movies that he thinks are worth seeing. That is actually really bad advice. What I've learned is you should never let the critics make decisions of what you watch for you. Trust me, in my experience and the experience of many other people, I've seen many movies that critics like him suggested that I watch, that were really good and you should really watch, that I didn't enjoy at all. And I've also seen movies that critics like him have panned and said that were the worst movies of all time, that I ended up really enjoying a lot. Sometimes, you know, critics aren't always entirely honest with you, and I mean, he's not entirely honest with anyone, and or they're just seeing stuff that just really isn't there, or maybe they just weigh things differently than you do. So my advice would be to just try to find something try to figure out what you like. Try to figure out what speaks to you. Now, I don't mean, now I'm not saying that you should only watch one genre. I'm saying that you should really do a deep dive into everything that you like, and try to figure out what is your comfort food, what is your thing, what is it that you really enjoy, and watch movies that are within that realm. My ultimate goal in life is to review a movie and have someone tell me that and say it's really good, and have someone tell me that is their favorite movie now. But I don't know if that's going to happen, but I hope it does. But my advice for now, find your comfort food.
That's what we're getting with Oppenheimer. It's what we're getting with Barbie. When you see a movie where it's like, okay, that creator, Greta Gerwig, took an IP, Barbie, and made a completely original movie out of it, and it became the highest grossing film of the year, and it's nominated for multiple Oscars, even though she totally should have been nominated for director. They hear that. They understand, all right, so IP-ish, but original. Got it. And that's okay. Like, there's so many openings for filmmakers to take very original ideas into things. In an ideal, perfect industry, the filmmaker studio relationship would be more of an understanding, loving relationship. But the problem right now is that so many studio executives, people who are making the decisions, did not come from a place of creativity. They were potentially managers or agents or people outside of the creative space in Hollywood who worked their way into a place where they're now telling creatives what to do. That's not the case for all of them, but it is the case for many of them. And
producers have been known for causing issues for films, but to exclusively blame producers, again, it's a really disingenuous point. I mean, there are countless examples of great producers and studios who had great relationships with directors and writers, and their films still turned out as shit. In a better world, more people would actually be good at their jobs. They would actually be skilled at what they do.
And they don't have ideas. They just have like inklings of what the market might want. What's selling big? What's not selling big? Well, we need to go towards this path because that movie sold really big. People are...
Hollywood has chased whatever was profitable for decades. When Jaws came out, that movie, there was a bunch of fish-themed movies that were made during that time. Or when Star Wars came out, there were a bunch of space operas made. When A Fistful of Dollars came out, there were a bunch of spaghetti westerns that came over here. And it's still going on today with when Avengers came out and got really big, there were more superhero movies made. This whole video just lacks any real substance. I mean, it's funny how Chris is trying to be all like passe and really professional when I'm being when I'm being pretty vulgar and I'm actually debunking all of his arguments with actual logic.
Looking for this. Our Netflix algorithm is suggesting that we need to make a movie about kung fu pirates who also cook. Like, that's what's happening, and it sounds like a joke, but I swear to you, it's not. It's not.
I wouldn't say no one is saying that it's a joke. And you are saying that it's happening all the time. Again, it's so disingenuous. Yes.
Not a joke. So people have been put in positions of power who want to be creative, but aren't creative. But they're put in a position where they now have to tell creatives what to do. And that...
I would say that creatives want to be creative, and they're just not as well. While yes, producers do cause problems, I don't think that lets the entire film crew off the hook. Because with being a writer and a director requires a certain amount of skills. Yes, it is hard, but some people are just better at it than others.
That's why you're seeing a lot of these things that you're seeing in film lately. And the hopes are that more filmmakers are able to break through with like an indie film. Look at Nolan. He was able to kind of prove himself. He took those steps. You know what I mean? In the case...
Okay, regardless of the fact that I don't enjoy any of Nolan's films that I've seen, hiring directors who have already proven that they have been successful has been a common strategy, has also been going on for decades. I would say that John Milius went down a pretty similar path as Nolan. He did a very successful indie film with Dillinger, and he made countless other great successful movies, and the rest is history. Now, not every filmmaker can knock it out of the ballpark all the time, like Nolan and Milius. Some people just aren't skilled at what they do, and and some people are just not cut out for what they're trying to do, and it's okay to point out that. And the reason we point that it's good to point it out is because maybe they'll get better. Madam Web is a perfect showcase of S.J. Clarkson's skills, which many people would argue are not good. And she did it with very little studio, with practically no studio interference. But at least she's not skilled at the moment. Maybe she could wow us later on, but to defend and the defender is just going to make her keep doing the same bullshit she's been doing all this time. And it's completely counterintuitive to what you want to do.
A lot of these filmmakers who make their first movie as a giant studio film, the studio does not look at that filmmaker as if they are an equal. They look at them as if they're someone they can boss around and tell them what to do because they're paying the bills, and what have you done exactly? And that's a lot of
that. No, that is not all that is happening. In fact, in this case, and in the case for a lot of movies, it's actually quite the opposite. I mean, should we really apologize to J.J. Abrams for fucking up the Star Wars or his movies, or apologize to James Mangold for fucking up the Indiana Jones character, or apologize for whoever directed No Time to Die, or apologize to any of these directors for making Charlie's Angels for criticizing their movies? No, that's not going to make them improve their quality.
what we're seeing now. So pay for movies that are good, keep paying for movies that are good. That's the only way that we can turn the dial to where it needs to be. Okay.
Is that what you really want, Chris? Is that what you want? Have a future with movies where we watch movies to like and support and buy the Blu-ray of and DVDs of even if they're not really that great, or continually suck the cock and lick the pussy of movie directors even though they're not skilled at what they do? Is that the future you want? Fuck that. That future ain't worth a damn. If you had it your way, this entertainment dark age is going to continue. And, well, the film industry is going to die. I just watching this video is just frustrating because he is so close to understanding the core issue, but he just doesn't want to admit that the people he's supporting are not good, are not talented, and they're not skilled.
Guys, thank you so much, as always, for watching. I really do like making these discussion videos.
Oh, fuck it. I don't even want to watch the rest of the video. This was tedious enough as it is. This video is frustrating, even more so when you know about his background. What he's suggesting is probably going to kill the film industry. The fact that he's just not really entirely, the fact that I know that he's just not being entirely honest is just makes it even worse. I don't even know if I have a point this time. I'm just upset that a movie reviewer that I once really respected is just not who I thought he was. Yeah. It's just, yeah. So yeah, now to answer the question of is film criticism dying or is filmmaking dying? I don't think it's dying. As long as there's enough people like me and, well, Cody Leach and actually in The Critical Drinker, actually. In fact, I think it's going to go strong. I mean, actually, The Critical Drinker is a good counterpoint to Chris's entire approach, because The Critical Drinker still gives negative reviews. But the thing is, he's able to explain his opinions. And, well, Hollywood has actually shifted to his kind of way of thinking in that time. So The Critical Drinker is kicking his ass now. And whether you like his videos or not, you can't deny that The Critical Drinker is way more successful at what Chris is trying to do than he do. So yeah. So there is still hope. So anyway, I'm Spike Robot. If you like this video, you can subscribe to my channel. And feel free to support me on Patreon and take my class. Anyway, see you next time on All the Freedom Jingos.
Not even recognize, where does the answer lie?